Over half the characters left the Chicago Med Season 10 finale in a state of uncertainty, raising questions that should be addressed when the series returns in the fall. By now, the Chicago Med cast should be somewhat accustomed to the shocking twists that seem to find them in all aspects of their lives. Most are lucky to go more than a week without a shocking death or personal betrayal dredging up the worst parts of their pasts. But the Chicago Med Season 10 finale nearly causes whiplash with some of its end reveals. This is something Chicago Med arguably does better than other One Chicago series, such as with the gut-punching reveal of Sully's death earlier in Chicago Med Season 10. But as entertaining as they can be, the hardest part of Chicago Med's twists is waiting to see how they eventually play out. And given some of the more effective twists and reveals in the Season 10 finale, fans are in for a long summer while awaiting answers in Chicago Med Season 11. 8. Will Goodwin's attacker get out of prison after Chicago Med Season 10? Cassidy's doing everything she'd need to get parole. As a solid demonstration of why Chicago Med is NBC's top-rated drama, Season 10 began with a disaster that affected the rest of the season. Gaffney struggled to provide enough blood transfusions for their patients after a shipwreck flooded the team with patients, and Goodwin's handling of the situation resulted in her being stalked and subsequently stabbed by a patient's widow in the fall finale. Sharon's would-be murderer, Cassidy, is now behind bars, but she makes an unexpected appearance at the very start of the Chicago Med Season 10 finale. Cassidy tries to tell Goodwin that she regrets her actions now that she's on antipsychotic medication and currently embracing religion, but Sharon's not interested in hearing what Cassidy has to say. What's interesting is Cassidy's apparent remorse and active efforts to change could eventually qualify her for parole. Since she committed a violent felony, she'd probably have to serve a significant portion of her sentence first. However, the crew can find a justification for springing her early if it's decided that she still has a story left to tell. 7. Will Lizzie forgive Hannah's pregnancy? Her reaction to the news was a bit harsh. From the moment Asha's pregnancy was revealed, one of the lingering questions was how her sister would take the news. Lizzie held a long grudge against Hannah because of her former heroin addiction. But Hannah's done everything from paying for IVF to offering herself as a surrogate to help Lizzie become a mother. Unfortunately, it's not easy to become a surrogate when there's already a bun in the oven. In fact, Hannah only learned she was pregnant in the first place when she was told she didn't qualify for surrogacy. Hannah does promise to go through with the surrogacy after she delivers her baby, but Lizzie reasonably points out that Hannah will be too busy raising a child at that point. Less reasonably, Lizzie refers to Asha's pregnancy as typical Hannah and suggests she never should have trusted her sister at all. Liz is clearly emotional and simply lashing out, but that's never resolved by the end of the finale. Whether she'll move on and support Hannah during this life transition remains to be seen, but hopefully, their relationship will end up back on the right track. 6. Will Charles make right with his daughters? He'll have to keep a pretty big promise now. After the death of Daniel Charles' mother, her funeral revealed how little he appears to know about his daughters' lives. He had no idea his older daughter Robin had been in regular contact with her grandmother and recently discovered Anna dropped out of Stanford and returned to Chicago weeks ago without telling him. When she wraps her car around a tree in the Chicago Med Season 10 finale, he learns Anna left school because she's been dealing with untreated depression, causing her to feel abnormal and isolated from her classmates. Anna and Robin tell Charles how they find it difficult to open up to him because he has a habit of speaking to them like a psychiatrist rather than a father. Once Anna's on the road to recovery, Dr. Charles promises he'll do more listening than talking when she's facing personal issues in the future. In theory, this is a great progress for their relationship. But with all three One Chicago series renewed for future seasons, Charles will have to live up to that promise before his relationship with his daughters is truly on proven footing. 5. Is Ainsley truly gone for good after Chicago Med Season 10? She disappeared almost too easily. Caitlin Lennox's Chicago Med romance with Hayes may have been problematic, but it's practically nothing compared to the relationship between John Frost and his childhood co-star, Ainsley Town. When she comes to Gaffney to study Maggie for an acting role, it's revealed Frost was groomed into starting a physical relationship with Ainsley while he was still underage. It took him time to admit what happened was wrong, largely because he was worried about losing what he perceived to be a strong emotional bond. After a heart-to-heart talk with Charles, Frost finally admits that he wasn't comfortable with Ainsley taking advantage of him. He confronts Ainsley about it and asks her to stay out of his life, marking her last appearance to date. However, problematic figures from the main characters' histories tend to pop up again when they're least desired. Ainsley might worry about Frost outing her and getting her career cancelled, but she also seems to have a romantic interest in him that borders on obsession. It's plausible she might be back again at some point. 4. Where are John Frost's parents in Chicago Med Season 10? He doesn't seem to love talking about them. Not long after Ainsley's arrival, Frost started losing it with patients' families whose parenting skills he felt needed improvement. He chastised two influencers for asking their fans for advice when their son was hurt, and his talk with Charles about Ainsley occurred after he began visibly crying over a young patient's mother abandoning him. It seemed at first like Frost's reactions were based on his fictional mother-son relationship with Ainsley, but that merely raises the question of where his actual parents were when that relationship was getting out of hand in the first place.